one last time. Let's take a break tonight, and then we'll teach them how to say goodbye. To say goodbye, you and I.
No, sir.
I want to talk about neutrality.
Sir, with Britain and France on the verge of war, is this the best
I
time?
want to warn against partisan fighting.
What?
Pick up a pen, start writing. I want to talk about what I have learned, the hard-won wisdom I have earned.
As far as the people are concerned, you have to serve. You could continue to serve.
One last time, the people will hear from me. One last time.
Hola, it is Tuesday, and we are going to talk about President Trump. Wait, Obama. No, President Washington. Yes, President Washington. He was the first president of the United States, who you heard there singing with Hamilton, about to retire as president after 2 terms. We're going to look at who he was kind of leading up to the war, why he's going to become president, and then we're going to kind of look at a couple conflicts that happened during his presidency, some major issues that were debated and discussed. While we go through this presentation, make sure you get some notes over what we're going to get here, because that is what you're going to take a picture of and submit today as your proof that you did it. Nice. So go ahead and pause here if you need to grab a notebook, something to write with, and then I'll move on. All right, first part is at the end of the Revolution. What was going on? Well, George Washington actually wanted to retire. He was this big war hero. He just got the independence of the United States. He wanted to retire. That was his plan. However, a lot of the issues during the Articles of Confederation, better known as the Trashitution, actually going to motivate him to seek a constitution. If you remember, our Shays Rebellion, this picture on the top right, happened, and that was a bunch of the poor farmers mad that they're being taxed. So they rose up to try and shut down the courts to stop them from being taxed and to stop losing their farms. So it took actually Washington leading the state militia to put that rebellion down. So that was the craziness that we talked about earlier in, I think, January. Also, Washington is going to be known, much like Hamilton, as a Federalist, because he's going to really seek a constitution after several of these conflicts in the early nation. So he's going to be pro-government that can basically prevent rebellion that will overthrow the government. So some may say he was a pro-strong government, but really as a Federalist, he just wants a constitution that makes a government that works. Go ahead and pause here if you're still writing. So how did he become president? Well, he was the commander-in-chief and the war hero, the hero of the Revolutionary War. So he was already pretty popular amongst his soldiers, and a lot of people around the country kind of heard of who he was from major events and decisions, such as like what happened at Valley Forge, where he did the inoculation of soldiers, and he hired von Steuben to train the soldiers. We captured the best general at Yorktown, so he's pretty well known. So a lot of people see him as the best choice. And really, during and really before the war, he was kind of seen as already a national leader. So he kind of led some of the first Continental Congresses before the war started. He was seen as one of the leadership figures already. And when the election ends up going down, he's going to be the only person actually picked by the Electoral College to be president. He's the only president in U.S. history to get 100% of the electoral votes. It's insane. And John Adams will end up becoming his vice president. And later he'll become the second president of the United States. Pause here if you're still writing. Here's a picture, or painting, I guess, of his inaugural address. And really, this is a good example of Washington being a trendsetter. He's the first president, but he also gave an inaugural speech. So he created a tradition that we still see today. Whenever a president is elected or re-elected, they will give an inaugural speech. So that's the one thing to do. So what did he do as president? Well, there was some drama here. It was intense. But he was really focused on foreign policy. That was a big mission of his. He wanted to focus on foreign policy. In Europe, the French Revolution was going on. So really, if you want a timeline, the American Revolution had happened. Boom. We signed treaties with the King of France. He agreed to help us. Franklin and Thomas Jefferson both basically helped convince the king to send aid because they hated the British. But after the American Revolution, the people of France also wanted democracy. They wanted to be able to vote and make choices. They had a really corrupt government, and they had a king in charge, and they're kind of done with that. So long story short, they basically are going to take the king and queen of France and behead them and then become a democratic state. Yeah, it escalated pretty quickly. I know. But also at this time, a war is going to kind of break out between France and England, because remember, France helped us and England was not cool with that. And really, Washington actually had to listen to a epic battle go down, but he refused to join sides of two of his advisors. And I'll remind you, it went something like this.
Do we provide aid and troops to our French allies, or do we stay out of it? Remember, my decision on this matter is not subject to congressional approval. The only person you have to convince is me. Secretary Jefferson, you have the floor, sir.
When we were on death's door, when we were needy, we made a promise. We signed a treaty. We needed money and guns and half a chance. Who provided those funds?
France.
In return, they didn't ask for land. Only a promise that we'd lend a hand and stand with them if they fought against oppressors. And revolution is messy, but now is the time to stand. Stand with our brothers as they fight against tyranny. I know that Alexander Hamilton is here and he would rather not have this debate. I'll remind you that he is not Secretary of State. He knows nothing of loyalty. Smells like new money, dresses like fake royalty. Desperate to rise above his station. Everything he does betrays the ideals of our nation. Hey, and if you don't know, now you know, Mr. President.
Thank you, Secretary Jefferson. Secretary Hamilton, your response.
Come on, let's see it. I would love to hear it.
You must be out of your mind if you think the president is gonna bring the nation to the brink of meddling in the middle of a military mess, a game of chess where France is queen and kingless. Who signed a treaty with a king whose head is now in a basket? Would you like to take it out and ask it? Or should we honor our treaty, King Louis's head? Do whatever you want. I'm super dead. Enough. Hamilton is right.
Mr.
We're
President.
too fragile to start another fight.
But, sir, do we not fight for freedom?
Sure, when the French figure out who's gonna lead them.
The people are leading.
The people are rioting. There's a difference. Frankly, it's a little disquieting. You would let your ideals blind you to reality. Hamilton,
Sir.
draft a statement of neutrality.
Did you forget Lafayette?
What?
Have you an ounce of regret? You accumulate debt, you accumulate power, yet in their hour of need you forget.
Lafayette's a smart man. He'll be fine. And before he was your friend, he was mine. If we try to fight in every revolution in the world, we never stop. Where do we draw the line?
So quick-witted.
Alas, I admit it.
I bet you were quite a lawyer.
My defendants got acquitted.
Yeah. Well, someone ought to remind you.
What?
You're nothing without Washington behind you.
Hamilton.
Daddy's calling.
Oh, snap. So as you heard there, Jefferson, Secretary of State, was pro-France. He was trying to get support to go to war with France to help them. They've helped us in our need, right? Whereas Hamilton, being the Secretary of Treasury, remember, Secretary of State, his job is to deal with foreign countries, go over there and help make those treaties the president wants, keeps the peace, maybe goes to war. Technically, the president declares it, but this secretary helps him with that. Whereas Hamilton was Secretary of Treasury. He's responsible for money. He's responsible for making the banks. Eventually, we'll get there. Trade, all these kind of things. And he's going to be pro-British because really, at the end of the day, he is a financial man, and he sees that Britain has this huge empire, makes tons of money of trade. If we want to succeed as a nation, we should probably side with the British because, well, we're going to make money if we side with the British. At the very end there, though, Washington made a choice, and it was not to side with either. Instead, we wanted to focus on neutrality. So you heard him say there, write me a bill of neutrality. So the U.S. become stronger if we stay neutral. That's the ultimate idea. Washington said, we just came out of a war. We can't financially afford it. The people aren't going to support it. Why would we go to war now? It's a horrible idea. Go ahead and pause here if you're still writing. So Hamilton, Jefferson, here's their beautiful portraits showing these two. We'll be looking further at their epic battle in the days to come. So Washington, in the end, he's going to write a farewell speech, if you will. And actually, the Hamilton song we listened to at the top, which is One Last Time, in the version of that song, in the middle, there's actually a part where you hear Washington reading. That's actually an excerpt from his actual farewell speech. It's pretty cool. But in Washington's excerpt, or really his farewell speech, he talked about several things, which is really, really interesting to look at today still. First thing he talked about is what he saw as the dangers of permanent ties or alliances with a foreign government. Why he said that was choosing sides in a conflict like France and England will draw us into another war. If you do a little foreshadowing here and jump ahead, in the early 1900s, the reason why there's going to be a first world war is this very reason. The United States was not permanently tied to any of those countries, but a lot of them had really strong alliances, and well, it's going to lead to one of the worst outbreaks of war in history. Also within our nation, political conflicts, especially the division of peoples geographically, he saw this as something that would weaken our government. If you look at the colonies in this era, remember the southern states still have slaves. They're very pro-slaves and they don't want to give that up. Whereas the north don't have as many slaves. Some people in the north would support getting rid of slavery. And so you could already see that right there is a division within our government. If you remember when we talked about the Constitution, one of the deals was that slavery could exist, just no new slaves could be bought until after 1815, and then we'll figure it out later. Civil War. Another thing is Washington opposed an idea of creating political parties because he wanted us to have unity. And he says the best way to have success is not to be divided by political standpoints. He kind of argued that we also need to work out our differences, not just always argue, but compromise. And to always protect our independence was another big thing. And the last thing he talked about is he argued our government should not borrow too much money. And the main reason why is he argues our future generations shouldn't have to pay a bunch of taxes to pay off these debts, or really to help protect those future generations from potential problems that will arise from so much debt. Go ahead and pause here if you're still writing. But here's the next one. So in the end, what was the legacy of Washington? Well, Washington is actually going to be modeled for the tradition of all presidents, because every single president is going to serve 2 terms in U.S. history. Not because there's a law, but because Washington did. It's very cool, right? So every president that followed him idolized and followed in his footsteps. The only person who did not was Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was the only president to serve 3 terms, and he was actually elected for a 4th term, but he passed away before he could actually serve his 4th term fully. So that's when a law was made. That was during World War II. And the main reason a lot of people argue, Roosevelt was also very, very popular amongst people because he helped get us out of the Great Depression. Then World War II broke out. So he was our president through the 1930s to the end of World War II, or almost to the very end of World War II. He passed away in 1945. But because he was the only president to run 3 terms, they actually made a law that would then make it so you can only serve 2 terms. So yeah, that is all you got for today. Pause it here if you need to finish writing it. I got a great brain break for you. It's a song you all know. So I'm just gonna put it on. It's a great song. You all know it. So here we go.
Washington was the first president under the new government made by the Constitution. Everything he did set precedent and defined the presidency as an institution. From his title, Mr. President, to the speech he delivered at his inauguration. And with his brand new cabinet, advisors help him to make it through. With Henry Knox and Thomas Jefferson, and Randolph and Alexander Hamilton, these are the presidents of Washington. He's the first president that we had ever had. Should we get involved in foreign wars? George favored to adopt a policy of neutrality. For a long time his world stance endured. The U.S. would remain neutral till the 20th century. And if whiskey makers rebel, watch out, George is coming there for you. After two terms, it's time to move on. George fell. Our traditions never lasted till Franklin Roosevelt. These are the presidents of Washington. 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 He's the first president that we had ever had.
Welcome back, Clint. I am Mr. Betts.
Anyways, that's Mr. Betts, Washington, Tototos, Africa. Anywho, tomorrow we're probably going to start diving into and looking at Alexander Hamilton versus Jeffersoni. And that's the big stuff. Make sure you attach a picture of, or if you typed on a doc, of your notes onto this assignment. And that is all we've got for today. So, have a great day. Don't forget to watch CNN 10 if you need a shuffle brain breaker sometime. But take care and have a great Tuesday. Bye-bye.